Welcome to the Hoops Biz series of podcasts by Shooting the Breeze. I'm your host, Paul Camillos. We've been wanting to look at the business side of women's hoops in depth for some time. Now, with women's sports getting more attention and seeing significant growth, we felt it was time to look at the business of basketball in depth and get a better understanding of where things are at, the challenges facing the game, and the opportunities that are available. Make sure to subscribe and share the pods with anyone you know who wants to know more about Hoops Biz. Welcome to the fourth of our Hoops Biz series. I'm Paul Camillos, and in this episode, I'm joined by two previous guests. Co-hosting this episode with me is Kelsey Griffin, and we're talking with ex-NBL assistant coach, now assistant general manager with the Phoenix Mercury, Fleur McIntyre. It's great to have you both here on the show, and firstly to you, Kelsey, it's great to have you back, especially as a co-host for this episode. But first, I just want to ask you, have you been after what was a pretty tough WNBL season that ultimately didn't go the way that you may have hoped?
Well, I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. But actually, in a lot of ways, it went way better than I could have imagined. Going from a team, having only one returning starter, one of my best mates, fortunately getting pregnant and pursuing that chapter of her life, and being left with a bunch of debutantes that were super eager to be great. Like, as a 38-year-old, you can't really ask for a lot more, to be honest. Like, I was surrounded by a lot of up-and-comers who were, just little sponges. And so it was really challenging in a lot of ways because I think we exceeded my expectations, and I was like, oh my gosh, we have a chance at this thing. Whereas when I entered it, it was more of like how can I help create an environment for these guys to have a great experience in their first year WNBL and know what it takes, to being like, oh my gosh, we could do something special here. So it was balancing expectations. It was a great exercise, and I probably learned just as much from them as they did for me. So whilst we didn't get a championship, I'm super, super, super proud of the season we had.
Great. And Fleur, it's been a while since we've spoken, and you've been in Phoenix. It's been almost 2 years now.
It is. I think it's actually 2 years in like 10 days or something like that. But yes, coming up on my 2-year anniversary. Well, heading into my third season, but 2 years in Phoenix. Yes.
And I suppose just as an opening sort of question, what's it been like being part of the front office after being down there on the floor for so long?
Yeah, it was an interesting transition. I absolutely love the front office. I feel like my body and my knees thank me that I'm not trying to rebound a basketball, or nothing was more soul destroying than trying to operate on court with professional men, with the Kings, and getting my ass handed to me every single day. But while it was fun, it's my body is quietly thanking me that I now sit behind a desk. But I do love the transition to the front office. Really lucky in that we have such a close-knit staff. So I love the diversity and the variety of the front office. Like, something different is coming at me every day. But at the same time, I'm really lucky because I'm really close with our head coach and our assistant coaches. So I love it when they come in and say, like, this is what we're thinking. What do you think? So I get like my X's and O's, like basketball kind of fix, which is nice. But you do miss like the sweat equity. I talk about, there's like almost an inbuilt camaraderie when you're a coach and a player, when you're in it together. Like Kelsey was just talking about going through their season. Like, there's just something inherently special about being part of that group on the floor. So there are elements that I miss, but yeah, I'm really enjoying the transition to the front office.
Great. Now, also, you had a pretty interesting season this season, like a very thrilling playoff series, and you probably upset some teams that people weren't expecting you to upset. From your perspective, how did that feel? And more importantly, and I'm curious about this too, what goes through the front office when this is all happening as well?
Yeah, it was a crazy run. If you had said to me, I sat down with our GM at the start of the season and we were like, okay, what do we want to achieve? It's our second season in the role. I think we would have been happy with a playoff win to improve on the season before. And then you kind of we get a win in New York in game 2 and you go into game 3 back home and you're thinking to yourself, oh, we could win a series here. Okay. I think, as Kelsey would know, you do need a little bit of luck in the playoffs. And I think we did probably have a little bit of luck go our way. A couple of key players in opposition teams suffered injuries, which obviously has an impact in a series. But yeah, if you'd said to me at the start of the season, oh, you're going to make the WNBA finals, I would have been absolutely thrilled. But then you almost have to sit there at the end of the season, like you talk about what goes through the front office, like you really have to reflect and say, okay, like hand on heart, are we running it back or is there room for improvement here? Like, do we think we're a good enough team to be a WNBA finals team? And, we ran into a steam train that was Vegas, and Asia Wilson is just, she's the best player in the world for a reason. But it's like really looking at it critically and saying like, okay, what an unbelievable run. Like we just made the WNBA finals, but hand on heart, is that where we were, destined to be, or do we really need to look at how we can improve? And I think that's the question for a front office when you go on this crazy run. We were returning, like you just spoke about, Kelsey, we had 2 returning players from the year before. So no, I don't think, someone was telling me no one in the history of the WNBA or the NBA has gone to a WNBA or NBA finals with less than, I think it's 5 returning players. So to do that was incredibly special, unbelievably huge effort and credit to our coaching staff and our players. You sign someone like Alyssa Thomas and she just refuses to lose and will just carry people with her. But yeah, it's a really interesting time when you get there, you're not satisfied to be there, you get your ass kicked by Vegas in the WNBA finals. So you don't want to overreact too much, but you also have to critically assess like, okay, where do we need to get better? Is this team a finals team? Is it a championship contending team? And I think we've made unbelievable strides and the future is so promising for this Mercury group.
I think with that, I kind of heard like a lot of talk about finals and making finals and competing for a championship, right? Like that's why we do it. But for me, my definition of success, because ideally you want to win a championship every year, but the reality of that happened. And to your point, you have to have some cards fall your way. As a GM or in the front office, what is your definition of success? Like when you look at, we've had a successful season. How do you guys define it? If it isn't obviously going towards a championship, but like the caveat that understanding that's probably not the reality every single season, even though you want it to be.
Yeah, and I think, like you just spoke about, it's obviously the end goal is a championship. That's what we're striving for. It's what everyone's striving for. Yeah. But I also think, we talk about it all the time. It's like making sure that the things that underpin winning a championship is obviously acquiring talent. You're not going to win a championship without talent, but also building the culture in your organization every single day. So for us, what success looks like, for me, there's such changeover in the WNBA and the NBA and pro sports in America that I think your culture starts with your staff and the people that you have in the building every single day. And that are we a place where people want to come to work, where people want to come to play, and what is the energy and what is being poured into that organization every single day. And I think we have done an unbelievable job in the last 2 years in having the greatest staff that I think are a joy to work with. And I think everyone's striving for excellence in everything they do, whether it's folding the towels, or building the roster. Like everyone is bought in to what their role is, but also doing it to the best of their ability with excellence. And again, at the end of the day, the chips are going to fall where they will. Do you know what I mean? You either win it or you don't, but it's ensuring that every single day you are striving for success and excellence in all departments and what we pour into this organization every single day. That for me is success, which hopefully will ultimately lead to us winning the whole thing at some point.
So I'm curious, not just me, but a lot of people I'm sure listening to this would be curious, what does the role of an assistant GM encompass?
Yeah, it's okay. I'm going to give the most lame answer of all time, and I apologize. I'm embarrassed that I say this, but honestly, you just generally manage across so many different areas. Right. It is the lamest answer, and I'm always embarrassed to say it, but it does encapsulate what I actually do. So I'll go through a snapshot of it. So primarily our job is to build the roster and to build a team that is going to compete for a championship. So free agency, the WNBA draft, scouting, both international, pro and college is a huge part of my role. I'm also in charge of our research and analytics department. When I first came to the job, our GM tasked me with you're going to build it. So I'm like, okay, I have no idea what that looks like, but sure. So really fortunate. I have 3 young women that work for us, which I think would probably be the only all-female research and analytics department in pro sport. And they are inherently brilliant and curious. I often joke that I'm the dumbest person sitting in our staff meetings. So I sit across that. I also work with our staff a lot. I'm really intricately involved in all hiring across our health and performance, our operations departments, our front office. I work with our coaching staff on player development. So I get my fix there in terms of what we're going to work on with our players. How do we keep developing our players? I am across our salary cap and contracts, platforms and technologies that we use. So I could list a million jobs. I sometimes get home and I'm like, I need to watch so much more film, but the day has gotten away from me because I've got staff coming in. They need something. There's a problem that's happened. But yeah, primarily it is the roster and building, but it's across all different areas of our basketball operations. So when I say I love the variety, it's because I manage across so many different areas. It's a lot of fun.
I'm kind of curious about the whole analytics and research part of it.
Sure.
You've just said, I've got what you think is the only all-female analytics and research team. And when you say analytics and research, I'm sure it means a whole bunch of different things to a whole bunch of different people.
Yeah.
What do they do?
Yeah, so I'll nerd out for you a little bit here. I am an inherent nerd. As you probably know, I come from a research background when I used to teach at university. And yeah, so I am an inherent nerd and I make no apologies for that. I have 3.
Love that.
Yeah, I just own
Me too.
it. I love that. So I have a data analyst who works really closely with our coaching staff, and basically her role is to produce pre-game reports, post-game reports, obviously analytics based in terms of outcomes of the games, 10-game trends, looking at trends across the WNBA, what wins in the WNBA. So there's elements of research there, similarities between the NBA and the WNBA, and looking at what tracks and what's changing. You know, we've seen for example, the 3-point revolution, like Kelsey, you would have seen this as well. Like, obviously analytics into shot quality, the type of shots you want. And I think in terms of women's sports, it's been a little bit behind, obviously the investment, but also player understanding. I mean, I know when I went through, Kelsey, you would be the same. Like, what? You shot the shot, So I think there's a little bit of a change in education, and our players are unbelievable, like buying in. You don't want to overwhelm people with numbers, but you want to make a basketball case about why this is a great quality shot. And on the same thing on the defensive side. So our data analyst works in that role. I have a data scientist that works really closely with us in the front office, and she will model out and predict WNBA draft rankings for players, current free agency rankings. And she will tell us what's bang for our buck in free agency. Like, hey, these 3 players are like going under the radar, but they are on the ascension. Like, we should look at them. Can we get them for a bargain? So there's some really cool intricacies and I guess frameworks that you can lend to your strategy that may give you an advantage over other teams. And thirdly, I have a senior software engineer who handles all these data platforms and softwares and ingestion of data and all these words that I have no idea about, but I sound like I do because I've learned so many words in the past 12 months. So they're the 3 elements basically that make up our team. And I think a lot of WNBA teams now are employing sort of 1 or 2. And we're very, very lucky. We have 3 full-time employees that I think really give you some insight into obviously what you see and what you hear, but then the numbers kind of can tell you a story in terms of, does it question what you think is going on? Does it support it? And the why behind it. So there's some really cool stuff in there. Thank you for letting me nerd out for the last 2 minutes.
Well, I'm really curious about that because Kennedy, to his credit, is probably the most analytic coach that I've worked with and has really brought that to the forefront and can show us and discuss analytics. And I've probably, being a little more old school, was a bit more challenging on it because there's this huge element as a player that's so feel based. Yes. But I also think it's great. So I like it because it's a different way for me to view the game. But I haven't really thought of or been exposed to being able to, I guess, quantify that in a player when you're looking at their draft ascension. How, because it's beyond just points per game and rebounds per game, I'm assuming it's far more. So then is it as simple, or can you simplify it, I suppose, to say we have a gap here that we're trying to fill? This player has those qualities based on numbers. Like, how does that kind of work?
I can. So this would be really cool. So I'll give you an an example. I'm trying to build my team around a Kelsey Griffin. All right, a mainstay. She's a winner. I'm going to go build a championship team. I know I want Kelsey as my centerpiece. I can run advanced analytics and all-in-one metrics that, you know, we're privy to and we have access to from people far smarter than any of us, but I can then run examples on free agents and look at the top 5. Okay, well, this is what I feel like Kelsey needs alongside her. I think she needs some playmaking. I think she needs some point of attack defenders. I think she needs spaces. Can they shoot the ball? Are they a self-creator? Is it catch and shoot? I can run all these scenarios and work out what we feel is a fit next to you. And then I can look at the top 5, the top 10 across all the free agents in the league and really help us make some informed decisions, because I wouldn't say it completely dictates what we do, but I would say we definitely lean heavily on it sometimes, because it makes you check your own biases at times of what you think. But at the same time, I have to have an understanding of like, okay, Kelsey's my stud. These are the things she does unbelievably well. What works next to her? Like, how are we going to contend by building pieces? So there's some really cool ways that we can like make dashboards and interfaces and pretty visualizations of how we look at, all right, well, these players combined with Kelsey, we're going to go make a run at this thing. So yeah, it's some really good stuff.
That is, and like, I won't dwell on this too much, but like, this is awesome. So is that also something then where you have analytics around how you build their player development too? Because obviously there's projections of who they probably can be for you. So then does that inform your assistant coaches about like, hey, they're coming in and they have these pretty well set, but we need them great in these areas, so we're going to tailor workouts towards that?
Absolutely. You're so spot on. Yeah, right. I think we're also really lucky as part of, you probably heard the story, like Kelsey, you played with Sammy. We also have a shooting software called Noah, and it tracks every single shot in our entire facility. Now, I don't know if you saw every interview that Sammy did last year, but Sammy shot over 20,000 shots in our facility last year. The next closest was like 6,000. Like, you've seen the work, but we can have a look at a player's shooting, their trajectory, their left-right variation. So that gives us information on like the shooting stuff. And then again, we look at the analytics and we look at the things like our style of play, how we want to play, but obviously their strengths. But how do we magnify those strengths and things that we think that they're pretty good at, but we could really sort of amplify as part of our system. So it might be like, you know, contested finishing around the rim. So it's probably one of the biggest growth areas, I would say. In the women's leagues and women's basketball. So like, how do you get a finishing package with contested finishes and, you know, those sort of things you can build into their player development. So there's some really cool stuff that you can do. And like, you always get feedback from the coaches, like the way we do it. It's like, what do you think this player needs to work on? And then we integrate it with the analytics. So we try not to ever let the analytics just dictate everything. It's meant to be a collaborative approach. And I would give our coaches a ton of credit, like you've spoken about. You know, originally, a lot of them were like, I've never done any of this stuff before. Like, I'm so scared of the numbers. Like, what the hell? But it's funny, after 2 years, they're so much more bought in because they realize that they don't have to have a maths brain for it. Like, you can just say, Fleur, tell me how this player is in pick and roll. Like, it doesn't have to be a numbers question. Like, I can give you the answer, but I can ask a basketball question and I can have a look at what the numbers are saying to either support or challenge kind of my thinking on particular areas. And that can be from a player, but even a team scout. So yeah, doing some very cool things at the Mercury. It's fun.
Very cool.
That is, I mean, to me, because like I've worked in the tech industry my entire career. I listen to that and I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
You know? You're getting right in there. You're merging all these different technologies to get this information. And obviously, it's actually delivering a real value to the business. I mean, probably the answer is nobody's really thought about it, but has anybody tried to actually quantify what the value of this is to the business?
Yeah, it's really interesting. They definitely do it on the business side in terms of ticket sales and projections and things like that. Like, there's actual real commercial value. You know, we talk about, as you two would know, like, the margin for getting that advantage is so small. It's particularly in the elite teams. You are looking for any advantage or any information that you think may be able to guide your coaches, help inform your players, really drive forward your style of play, or, you know, things that you want to input into your team. So whilst I don't think we've quantified it, I, again, probably bias. I need to check my own bias, but I have no doubt it gives us an advantage, you know, in those small margins and heading into a game. Having those resources at your fingertips, I think is a huge advantage.
Okay. So I suppose this is a great way of you saying that one of the biggest areas of growth in your career would be and tell me if I'm wrong on this, would be the exposure to having this sort of technology and this sort of data available. How much did that change your thinking when you started to get exposed to it?
Yeah, so I guess I would say that I'm a little bit different in that I've come from a research background, like the tech and the platforms and accessibility, like we didn't use that in the NBL at all. Like I think it's such a growth area in Australian basketball. Like I've actually talked a little bit to Basketball Australia about it. Like I think there's some real opportunities there to, like, when you go to FIBA events and things like that, it doesn't have to be overwhelming, but having that in the background. So the tech side of it and the data is certainly different, but I am inherently curious by nature, and I have a research background in terms of what's the question or what questions can I pose to often strategize and innovate and how we can come up with a solution. So I think the coolest part of the job is that I get to let these young women just loose on whatever they want to do. Like I sort of say, go for it. Like they're also in a position, I say this to them, like you've got a GM and an assistant GM that applauds curiosity and innovation. So like go for gold. Like that's the dream, right? Like it's like being coached and your coach says, I trust you, go get the ball in your hands and go make a play, So I kind of equate it to that. So I think my background has held me in really good stead for what I'm working in now. But yeah, the accessibility and the resources that the Suns have, that we're able to share, that now the Mercury have, is just eye-opening at the possibilities out there and what you can do with the amount of data that's available. It's been really cool.
You touched on something that just then that we want to talk about. So this is probably a good time to do it. Common ownership between the Suns and the Phoenix.
Yep.
Which is not really that common in the US. How much alignment is there between the two clubs? How much sharing of resources? And how well do the two organisations work together?
Yeah, really well, for want of a better word. We are exceptionally lucky. I thank my lucky stars that I ended up at the Mercury. Obviously, Matt Ishbia and Justin, our ownership group, and his goal on day one was always like, the Suns aren't having things that the Mercury aren't allowed to have. Do you know what I mean? Like that is not how we operate. He has been very clear and very vocal that he wanted to raise the bar of women's sports. And he said this out loud, like put pressure on other organizations to raise it for what you're offering the WNBA athletes and players. And I think we have, we originally, when I moved over here, we shared a facility with the Suns, but Matt's investment, we have a brand new, it's 2 years old now, but when I moved here, we moved during the All-Star break. Like basically he built us $100 million practice facility just for the Mercury. So we have, I've been to a fair few NBA facilities around the USA. I think it would be top 10, probably top 5, I think, in everything I've seen across it. So lucky in terms of the equity and equality of investment. Like he doesn't just talk about it, he actually lives it. And so I think we do work closely together. Again, really lucky in that even though we're in separate facilities, you can call on the Suns. So we have the same CEO, we have the same owner, we have the same business side. So it is very much intertwined. Again, for example, their research and analytics department, which has been around for a lot longer than mine, have been so helpful in helping to develop my staff and giving them resources and advice. So yeah, very, very lucky. It's very collaborative, despite the fact we don't spend a lot of time together when you're in the chaos of your own season, when you're in it. But you do know that the connections and contacts are there. And yeah, like I said, I think Matt has been incredible at putting his money where his mouth is and absolutely backs up what he's trying to do in drive not only the WNBA, but women's sport forward in terms of resources and infrastructure.
Well, it does kind of show that when you invest, you did say it took a little bit of luck. Invest, build this facility, talk about what you want to do, how exponentially a team can perform, especially in women's sport. I'm not saying throwing money at the issue is going to solve problems, but when you're strategic about it, to your point, looking at where are some opportunities, it is remarkable. And we've seen it, I think, in the WNBL where you have a different ownership group take in and they invest heavily into that team, what is possible from a recruiting standpoint. Like I was just thinking about it. If I was 10 years younger and Phoenix came to the table and was recruiting me and they were saying, hey, we know all of this about you. these are all the areas that we think you could help us in, but also get better at. It's like, that's an incredible opportunity. So you're going to attract people that want to be great if you're showing them how they can be great. So yeah, really incredible. With that, it sounds like in your experience, there's this great balance then of investment, but also autonomy. So being in separate place probably isn't the worst place because you guys are your own within the organization. Like, do you think that's actually to your benefit?
I really do, because I think that there is some nuanced differences between the NBA and the WNBA.
Absolutely.
You know, like, and I think women's sport is its own organism. Like, it has just such wonderful stories associated with the WNBA and the athletes within it and all these sort of great things. But I think having that autonomy as well is really important, and it's interesting because it also shows that whilst we are aligned with the men's league, there is enough with the Mercury that we can stand on our own with this incredible investment of staff and people in our facility. And I think that's been really important for us to show, you know, the rest of the WNBA, but also ourselves, as you know, like that we're not reliant on the NBA. And one of the things I love about the WNBA more so is that the NBA is so big. They have so many people working for them in organizations. Like, and that's absolutely all good. You know, it's its own beast. But the thing I love about the WNBA is that we are probably one of the most well-staffed organizations in the WNBA, but it's still small enough and it's still intimate enough is that, you know, everybody's name, everyone on staff spends so much time together. And I think the opportunity in the WNBA is the variety and the diversity. Like, I talked to you guys about my roles and what I do. In the NBA, there's one person that is solely just doing the salary cap. There's one person that's just solely doing trades and scouting. And whereas I think I get to experience all of it in the front office across the WNBA. And I think that's a strength. Like, I think the value of, you know, diversity and variety and expanding yourself across roles and not just being pigeonholed specifically into something that you're a lead at. You know, whilst that's important in a huge organization, I understand that. I think there's such a value add to myself as like an individual, but also the organization, that I know what goes on across so many of our departments and all these areas that actually make our organization run and our team run.
Okay, so there is something in what you touched on that I have many conversations with a lot of people across a lot of different businesses about. Do you think that when you get a lot of over-specialization, so as you said, one person doing this and then one person doing that, that you lose some of that, I'll call it research spark, that comes from being across a number of different areas? Because you see patterns that specialists don't necessarily see, because they just live in their little tower. And they're not necessarily picking up all those other little nuances from those other towers and building a different picture.
I completely agree. I don't know if you've ever read the book Range, but it talks about how to be a generalist in a specialized world. And it's so interesting. And I think there's such power and strength in diversifying and being across things that you might not know everything about. Like, that's where the beauty of collaboration and sharing knowledge and experiences lie. So I'm a huge advocate for not working in silos. I think when you encourage people diversifying their portfolios and what they're working on, A, it allows them to grow. B, it almost builds in forced collaboration. I don't want to say forced, but you get outside your comfort zone a little bit, and it forces you to be, you'll hear me say a lot, I always talk about words like curious and collaboration, because I think it is the cornerstone of driving organizations and people forward. Like, that's where the fun is, like the magic, right? And so I think when you allow people to do that and they get to go explore and investigate and be across different areas, it's where I think the greatest things can happen. So yes, I'm a huge advocate for you know, I think there's a time for specialization. I'm not saying that at all, but I think that as the world becomes, I think, more complex, people become more complex. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all model for things or a purely specialized answer. I think there's many different ways you can come at a solution, and it's the beauty of having people with unbelievable experiences and diversity that finds those answers.
I've heard you mention curiosity several times now, which I love, because that's actually my word for the year. I've decided that's where I'm going with. So I very much am appreciating and eating that up. Is it curiosity that, I guess, encouraged you to make the change from Australia to the US? And on court to assistant GM? Because I'm in this transitioning phase of my life. Like, I'm trying to figure out what I would like to do after basketball. And so I'm just curious how you went about it.
Yeah, it's so funny. Well, firstly, Kelsey, I think you're going to have your pick of whatever you want to do. Yeah. Having listened to you commentate, co-host on podcasts, I think you're going to be fine in whatever you decide to do. So it's really interesting. My GM says to me all the time, which I never really think about it, but it's such a beautiful compliment. He's like, you were so brave. You just picked up your life.
Yes.
Got on a plane, moved to Phoenix. The first time I saw Phoenix is when I got off the plane to start the job here. Like, I've never even been here before.
Wow.
And he's so beautiful in the way he says to me all the time, I'm so grateful and you are just so brave. And it's funny, I talked to Luke Longley still a lot about moving to the Kings, same thing, packed up my life in Perth and in the middle of a pandemic, moved to Sydney. And I think for me, when I was younger, and I think particularly as a female sometimes, I said no to a lot of things. And I talked to Renee Garlop. Sorry, I'm name dropping everywhere here.
Perfect.
I apologize. But
keep going.
Renee's a really good friend of mine. She's probably someone I talk to a lot of the time. And she has this cool thing, and I've kind of adopted that, like, I'm not going to say no due to fear. Like, I think growing up as a female as well, I said no to things in the fear of, like, what if it goes wrong? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, whereas now I'm grown up enough that I can say no if something doesn't align with my values, or I simply just don't want to do it. But I'm not saying no because I'm scared. So I think that has been a driving force for me, taking chances. And at the end of the day, I always just think, well, if it goes wrong, I'll just move back to Perth and live with mum and dad again. It'll be fine. So maybe it's a little bit of a false sense of security that's going on. But yeah, it is really nice that people say that. I don't think about it very much, but I think when you reflect on the decisions that you make and the chances that you take in your life, I think a lot of the time, it just comes down to the fact that, like, this could be really, really good and this could be really, really exciting. And I never, ever want to wonder, what if? So I think that for me has been a bit of a driving force in taking these chances and just seeing where this adventure takes me.
So did you get tapped on the shoulder, or did it come across in Seek, or like how did you like, were you like, the Kings are just too cruisy, we're winning too many championships, I need to switch it up, or like
I'll just see how I go. So it was really interesting. I went to, and I will say this, like, I have made moves based on trust in people, like in terms of where I wanted to go. So I went to Summer League with the Spurs. Obviously, RC Buford is connected to Chase, who coached the Kings, and was very kind in inviting me to spend a summer with the Spurs. So I was at Summer League in Vegas. Chase was there, and he messaged me and said, hey, a buddy of mine had been out in Australia. That's our GM now, Nick Uran. He had worked for the Warriors in, like, the glory days and been with them for like 12 years. He has just taken a job as GM of the Mercury. He really wants to meet you. Are you okay if I pass on your number? And that's how it started. I went and had a coffee with Nick in Vegas, and it was one of those conversations that I just thought, oh, this man is awesome. Like, I just straight away, and I'm so lucky. Like, he's become one of my closest friends. There was just an inherent trust, and I just loved what he was about. He's very curious as well. He's constantly being innovative. He's constantly looking at how we can assess things, but just be better. And so, I probably spent 2 hours with him, and I think we both just felt like, oh yeah, there's this, like, this would be cool. And he said to me at the end, if anyone offers you a job in the US, don't say yes yet. All right. Just let me know. And I'm thinking to myself, who the hell's going to offer me a job? Like, I'm like, whatever. Like, and then he called me a few months later. He'd sort of settled in and said, look, I've kind of got permission to, like, approach you. Would you be interested in, like, moving over here and working for us? And that's how it went from there. I called a couple of friends in the NBA that are coaching in the NBA, and I was like, oh, do you think, would this be a good move? And I'll quote Adam Capon, who coaches for the Wizards now. One of my best friends said to me, you would be an idiot not to take this job. So that was his exact words, as only, like, a best friend can tell you. So that's how it started. I say to Nick all the time, like, he calls me brave, but it is my inherent trust in who he is, not only as my boss, but just as a human. Like, it is so much fun going to work every day with Nick and Nate, our head coach. Like, yeah, it was like a no-brainer, really. Like, there was some risk involved, but yeah, just meeting him and knowing him, I think that's what made the decision easier. So yeah, no Seek application necessary, Kels. I didn't think it was the case, but I
was like. So I'm always really curious about is a role like yours, or a coach or, but these roles that have a profile end up having a lot of external expectation that comes with the role. Some of it good, some of it, let's say, not so good. What's that challenge like for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that Nick said something last year when we were having this run, and he's like, enjoy this because the ascension is the best part. Like, I think then when winning happens and success happens, then comes the expectation, right? So that kind of sticks with me at the time, like to enjoy it when you're in it. But it's really interesting when you talk about external expectations. So I think from a decision-making process and in an executive or a leadership capacity, you have to be really mindful not to make reactive decisions based on external expectations. I think that is the biggest downfall in a front office or in a leadership capacity, whether you're coaching or a GM or whatever it is that you're doing. That, and then again, I think it's something that I've learned from Nick. It's that calm, conscious decision making. Like, we have to decide, taking out the media, taking out the fans, taking out the externals, like those things are all important to your organization, because without them, it doesn't happen. You need that investment and that care and that passion. And whilst you embrace that and you are respectful of it, it cannot dictate any of your decision making. Your decision making has to come from internally. What is best for this organization? What is best for this team? And I think if you spend too much of your time focusing on things that really are outside of your control, and the outside noise should have very little impact on your processes and the way you go about your day-to-day. So that would be my answer for that one. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Absolutely.
I always am curious about how different people handle that for a whole bunch of reasons, not the least of which is there's never a shortage of people, especially now in these days of social media, there's never a shortage of people who've got an opinion. I'm also wondering, how does that, because, you've got a large organization, you've obviously got people who are responsible for your social media, for your marketing and everything that goes with that. There's a challenge that comes with all of this external expectation, particularly in those areas. From a business perspective, how do you manage all of those varying opinions? Because it's got the potential to do brand damage.
Yeah.
How do you manage it all?
Yeah, I think that it's interesting. Like, I mean, everyone's always going to have an opinion. Does that make sense? Like, particularly from fans and people in socials. Like, I remember last year in our free agency, we acquired Alyssa Thomas and Satu Sabali, and we were getting hosed on social media. I think half the internal people on our business side, because, working in a front office and, to acquire talent, that means sometimes you lose talent. So we did. We had to make trades. And making trades is, you have to make decisions that you think is the best for your team moving forward. It's not a fun part of the job, telling someone that they've been traded or that they're not going to be part of your roster. So it's certainly not something that I think people, any of us enjoy, but we also have to make decisions about what we know wins. And that's based on what we see, what we observe, our experiences, also relying on our analytics and that kind of information. So there's important information. And I think people can always question things and have opinions. That's absolutely fine. I'm never going to deny anyone their opinion. But like I said, you can't just let it dictate what it is that you do. You have to be really strong in your convictions. You have to be really tight. It's exactly the same as you're in a team in a locker room. No one knows what goes on in that locker room apart from the coaches, assistant coaches, and team that are in it every single day. Same thing with us. I think when you understand and you have all the pieces and use the right information, that's when you can make the best decisions. So people are going to have their opinions. I'll tell you a story. I had a fan experience. They won a tour of our facility last year. Sold memberships, and I had to take them for like a dinner in our facility. Again, huge flex. We have our own kitchen and chefs and things like that. So really tough gig getting food every day. So I had dinner with them, and they were saying to me, these two fans, and they were lovely, but they were like, I cannot believe who you guys traded. Like, I'm so worried, this is going to be a disaster. And I'm like, yep, no, I hear what you're saying. And, I'm trying to humor them, and like, it's all good and you're allowed to have concerns. And I remember one of them came up to me at a game halfway through the year and tapped me on the shoulder, and I turned around and she was like, I owe you such an apology. I said to her, oh, and I'm thinking to myself, about what? I couldn't even remember. And she's like, oh, I was so doubting you guys and I never should have doubted. I'm like, oh, you're fine. It's okay. You're allowed to have those opinions. And I'm sure half the organization was doubting some of the things you said. And Like at the end of the day, it's like with anything. Sometimes it's luck. You make moves and sometimes they come off and sometimes they don't. But we make our decisions based on what we think and what we believe is the right direction. That's all you can do.
I also think like that's a great story, and I'm good on that fan for actually acknowledging that.
Yeah. You don't get that often.
No, I think for me, and I was as you were talking and I was listening to you explain like that element of having to deal and back yourself. For me, what I found, what my biggest concern is it's a lack of conversation. And I think that's where it's like, you almost want fans to be like riding on every wave, every decision, because that shows that you've done something in your organization, that they are truly invested. You know, they're watching the trade boards. You know, this is off season. There isn't even basketball being played and they want to know what's happening with their team. And so I think from my experience, certainly in the WNBL, is when there's a lack of conversation or a lack of like uprising about things that's where it's like, oh no, we've lost that connection. And that's something that I think the WNBA has done an incredible job of growing that fan engagement where it's like, these are die hard. You know, I went and watched Kia Nurse play. It took me a while to be able to go back and watch WNBA games. My WNBA experience was one that has shaped me into the leader that I am today. But now when I go back home and I, watch the games. It was so cool to see these fans and these arenas full, because that wasn't always the case when I was playing. And so I think that fan engagement has just been unreal in the WNBA. So listening to you and then reflecting back, I was like, that's almost where I want the WNBL to get to, where they're like, what's happening in free agency?
Yep.
No, you've made a mistake. You shouldn't have signed that player. Like that'll be a good day in the WNBL.
I love that. And we joke all the time, our business president, our fan base is called the X Factor. And make no mistake, they are diehard. Like we average anywhere between like 12,000 people every single game. Wow. Our playoffs this year, it was close to capacity, like 18,000, and they live and breathe it. So I would say any chance you get, come through Phoenix and come experience a Mercury game. They are the greatest. But yeah, we do laugh all the time whenever we do anything. Our business president will say, oh, the X Factor will have something to say about this. They have no qualms. It's so funny. But that you're right, Kelsey, they are so invested, and it makes it so much more meaningful how much they care about this team and this organization and to represent this city. It's super cool.
Very cool.
So it's an interesting point in that the whole concept of fan engagement, it doesn't just happen. You got to build it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things that the WNBL is starting to focus on, but the WNBA has got to that point. What is it? And you're in a really unique situation because you've seen, Fleur, you've seen it here in Australia, you've seen it in the States now for a couple of years. If you could sort of point at two key things that would help to grow that kind of, that really tribal fan engagement, what would it be?
Oh, that's such a good question. I will say the WNBA is a little bit unique to the WNBL in terms of the followings that colleges have over here. Like, Kelsey, you can speak about it from coming from college. Like, we're hosting Final Four this year, and the followings for college players are unbelievable. And I think there's no doubt that you cannot not recognize people like Paige and Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and the sheer following that those players had established in college that then follows and tracks through to the WNBA. But I will also say this, I think the WNBA has done an unbelievable job. And again, I'm in Phoenix, which is a very strong fan base. They take pride in the fact that we're one of the original franchises. And I think that one of the things, particularly that the Mercury do, and I'm going to sing our praises for our business side, they produce an unbelievable game day experience. So again, I'll reiterate to you too, if you're ever through Phoenix, come through for a Phoenix game. But the other thing that we do an unbelievable job is families. Like, I think there is a real niche market in terms of fan engagements with families, in that it's such a family friendly and beautiful environment for your kids to experience. And I think they've done a wonderful job with that. And I think the other thing the WNBA has done a good job of, and I'm seeing it in the WNBL, and I really hope they explore this, in that social media wasn't around when I was playing back in the day. So, Kelsey, you could probably talk about this, you growing up. Like, it was not even a thing. And there's just this incredibly unique opportunity with this new media now to shine a very personal light on athlete stories. And I think there's such a uniqueness and engagement factor that fans really enjoy. And I think every athlete has a story. I think some of these WNBA athlete stories are unbelievable and completely remarkable. So I think that's another way that the WNBA has really tapped in to that growing fan base and that investment in the athletes as individuals. And then as a result, the league as a whole.
How much with and like this is something that I think is great now because the NBL is essentially the operational side of the WNBL. Like, and they're still figuring out how that's going to look and how it's going to work and putting a strat plan together for that, which I'm excited to see evolve and develop. This upstart that has to happen because the season is short. The WNBA experiences this as well. You've got players playing overseas. They'll play for other teams. And I'm kind of leaning more into the business, which I know this isn't necessarily assistant general manager role, but what I've heard is you're across everything. So I'm just going to pick your brain for as much. And if you don't feel like that's something you want to speak to or can speak to, please say it. But how do you avoid, or do you think because of the momentum as being a like foundational franchise of the upstart that you have to create excitement? Like, do you guys keep things happening through the off season? Is it a time for your staff to actually just take a breath because it's 24/7 when you're in season? Like, how do you manage that off season and then the upstart again to get everyone excited about games?
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like the off season is our busiest time in the front office.
Right.
So it's completely different for the coaching staff, although they're all in at the moment. You know, they're doing off season projects and things like that. But it's kind of a little bit different in like our playoffs is free agency in the front office. So we are gearing right now for the most chaotic free agency in the history of the WNBA. So it's going to be awesome. It's going to be so hectic, and I am like filled with apprehension, but also excitement about how cool it's going to be. So I think for us, like, you just don't want to rest on your laurels. Like I spoke about before, like as soon as we finished, you know, the players and the coaches, they need to get away and completely just unwind, relax. Whereas the front office, we take a week, we do exit interviews, and it's like, okay, let's review. Like, where are we at? What does this look like? And we're about to hit a time where we don't know what the rules are with the CBA. So we've been really creative in the off season, and that it's super fun. We've run simulations that what if this rule changes, or what if the cap increases 5 times? What does that look like? And what percentage is the max going to get? So you run out all these mock scenarios and simulations. And I think that generates thinking, but also excitement, as well as making sure that you're prepared for whatever comes next. So I can't speak kind of for everyone else, but for us as a front office and the preparation as an organization, that's something that we pride ourselves in and something that we definitely focus on because like you said, Kelsey, the season is short. Like I talk about the difference between the NBA and the WNBA. We play 44 games. Every game counts in the WNBA. Yeah. It's not like the NBA where there's 82 and for January, February, people are sleepwalking. Like you show up some nights, whatever. Like it matters in the WNBA. Yeah. And that's the other thing I'll say about these women. They care about winning. Winning matters and they care about it. So people ask me what it's like to work in this league, and same thing as the NBL and the WNBL. Like it matters. The seasons are short, so you can't come in not ready or underprepared, and that goes for coaching in the front office. So when we're trying to think about the upstart, like it starts right now. It started 2 months ago, you know, so that we're not going to be the people resting and be caught unaware by the unexpected. So we'll play out every possible scenario.
And with that planning, do you have like the immediate season plan and then the 5-year plan? Or like, is it like, how do you make it so it's not like you're surviving season to season with there being so much movement?
Yeah. Honestly, Kelsey, I'm going to be so happy next year if we don't have to rebuild a team from scratch. Like this will be the 3rd season in a row. Because obviously coming into the new CBA this season, everyone was on 1-year deals last year. So that's, you know, we kind of changed and pivoted a little bit. We had 2 icons of the franchise in BG and DT. That BG moved to Atlanta, DT retired. So it was a real pivot for the franchise. And then, like I said, everyone was on 1-year deals. So we got to go again and rebuild it again. So we keep laughing like, wouldn't it be wonderful if we sign people to 2 or 3-year deals so we don't have to go through this every single time in free agency? I think there's definite conversations. Like I think when you're building a team, you're sort of looking at, and it's different, like in the WNBA and NBA, like you're contending or you're rebuilding. I think we're in a contending window. So we have to keep that in mind with our resources, players wanting to come and play for the Phoenix Mercury with an opportunity to win it. So what does that look like versus in 5 years' time, for example, if our mainstays and our stars retire, do we then flip to rebuilding and how we do that? So more expansion teams coming in. The draft picks aren't going to be as high. It's going to be harder to get a lottery pick. So you've got to be a little bit creative in terms of having enough forward thinking to like, okay, here's a 2-year window here and now, we're going for it. Like, how are we building this thing to go win it? But at the same time, you can't not think 5 years ahead. I don't think I'll probably be here in 5 years, but it would be irresponsible of me if I didn't think about that for the organization. Like, okay, how do we think about this going forward? And if this happened, you're 1 injury away from being in the lottery in the WNBA, or 2 injuries away. So you've always got to have a mind on, like, what are our assets? What draft picks do we get? Or do we rebuild through free agency? It's sort of the way that you've got to always keep thinking with that strategy and foresight in mind.
It's a really good point about the 1 injury. Sorry, Paul. I'm just like,
go,
my brain is going really low. With the 1 injury, I think the WNBL is in this inflection point where for a long time, their purpose, I think without it being outright and publicized, was opals, creating a development pathway for Australia to compete. And boy, have they on the international stage, right? Incredible world rankings, always high up there, competing for medals. And now there's this business case for women making a living playing basketball, which always doesn't necessarily coincide with development. And to your point, game day experience and entertainment factor. And I think they're kind of at this tipping point of what do we do? How do we do it? Can both be done? The WNBA's never had development, or they might have originally. When I was there, the roster expansion to 11 was a big deal. Like, rosters were tight. And my experience, there wasn't development happening. We didn't really even have coaches on staff when I was playing that were, it was like, you're either pro ready, or maybe we'll give you 2 years, or we've got a talent pool that is ready to come in if you're not ready, kind of thing. What do you think would be for the WNBL position itself to be competitive with the European markets, with China, with all of that? Because it's got these, I think, some really tough or exciting. They don't have to be tough. I think difficult, potentially, decisions to be made about who they are, where they should go. With what's exciting is a very competitive salaries happening overseas, unrivaled, Project B coming up. That's a very loaded question, but I'd just love to, however you want to interpret it, run with it, please.
No, it's a great question. And I think, so I'll start with this. I completely agree with you. I think having a couple of DP spots, development spots in the WNBA is critical. Like, I look at Kelsey, your teammate this year, Meg McConnell, was with us for training camp. Do you know what I mean? She went undrafted. We brought her in for training camp. She did a really good job. You know, didn't make the roster, but she probably would have benefited, and she would have played, because there's always injuries in the WNBA where your DPs can go and get spots. I think the selling point for the WNBL, and I obviously, again, Australian, love the WNBL and everything that it offers, is that I think there is such success in young American players from college going and being a mainstay in the WNBL. And I think the thing about the Australian draw card is that English speaking, beautiful culture, unbelievable weather, and great people. So I have heard, you know, and I think you would know this, I think Europe can be a little bit of a roll of the dice with where you end up, getting paid on time, the medical facilities. Like, it is very fluctuating in Europe, whereas I feel like there is some real consistency in the WNBL, particularly with the expertise of our coaches, our medical staff, and also getting to play with the veteran talent in Australia. So I think there's a real capacity, whilst the money is a factor. And I think the WNBL is going to have to tap into that so it doesn't lose out exponentially to some of the money getting offered in China and those sort of things. But there is a niche there that separates Australia, and I think is the opportunity, particularly for these young players. I could list a million of this year in the WNBL. Lucy Olsen, Mackenzie Holmes, Alyssa Pearley, like these players that are either drafted, don't play, make training camp, go undrafted, go play in Australia, go cut your teeth. You look at the success of Nars Hillman, Veronica Burton from previous years. Like, it is a breeding ground for young talent to be able to go and elevate their games with great coaches, unbelievable, you know, an unbelievable country to play in. So that, for me, is the point of difference. And I think the WNBL could really tap into that as an opportunity.
I couldn't agree more. I feel like that's, if I'm a GM in the WNBL, I'm saying, who is a fringe WNBA player, or, you know, great college players. Like, you look at successful college players who and I'm one of them, who really struggled with the jump to the WNBA. I was that in-betweener, probably a 3 in the WNBA, but 4 in college. With that, do you think there's scope to almost build like a G League type relationship between WNBA and WNBL, where it's like, you know, say there's a West Coast grouping of teams that align with WNBA, and so there's almost more of this hierarchy might be too harsh of a word, where there's an identification of area of growth with the analytics, all the things that you talked about, where the WNBA has the resourcing to say, hey, this is what we need from this player. Is there a team we send them to or have a connection with in the WNBL that can grow them?
1,000,000%. I'm such an advocate. Like I look at, okay, I'll give you an example. The research on the WNBA draft outside pick 6, up to pick 6 and above, it's hard to make a WNBA roster. Like there was 144 spots. It's going to go up now. So more players are going to make it. But like, again, it's like throwing a dart at a dartboard, whether, so if you've got pick, 27, 40, whatever, like I'm a firm believer, do you go pick a young international and go stash them overseas and let them go develop? Like I think the NBA's been doing that for years. I think there's such power in that, and also as you spoke to, like those college athletes going over and playing like in a G League developmental system. Like I don't know if it'll work with what the NBL does with the Next Star program, but again, I think that's a great program. You go and play in this great adult league somewhere and get some reps with some physicality, with some great coaching, the opportunity to develop. And I think it'd be such a powerful way to also help the WNBA, but then also vice versa. As you spoke about, is there a way that WNBA can give back to like the WNBL, and just saying like, hey, these are indicators that we're using to see how this player's doing. We're tracking this and this. And so it kind of opens people's eyes up to like, okay, this is what they're looking for in like the best women's league in the world. These are the things that they're focused on. These are the trends that are coming from the NBA and the WNBA. Is there ways that we can implement that and be able to kind of share back and forth across those leagues?
And I'm just thinking as an athlete, and I know my transition is pro, like I was drafted a lot higher than I anticipated. All these things happened and almost felt like I kind of got lost in a system. Whereas if I was like, oh, my team's actually working with my overseas team in some capacity, like there's obviously going to be still players that miss out and things. But if you felt you were a part of a bigger plan or you had some real tangible things you were going away and working on, because what I found as an import is your stats really mattered in Europe, right? Like you had to get your 20 and 10. Like you are there to score. You're there to perform, similar to the WNBA, which is what I really struggled with because I didn't come from a college system that applauded that. It was team first, which is when I came to Australia, what was so refreshing was like, oh, this is about team basketball. And that's not for everyone. Like, don't get me wrong, but I could really see this great business opportunity, to your point, where both sides benefit and the player doesn't get lost in the system, feels a part of the bigger plan, strengthens the talent pool for the WNBL, but then also increases the depth chart for WNBA players where, granted, they're different seasons, so it's not like you could call on a WNBL player to go play automatically, but you're still getting that development space. But I guess the other thing that this brings us into is the whole nil stuff that's going on in college and players. I mean, women's players have always wanted to stay longer, but now, like, I don't know when the COVID years are going to stop getting tacked on.
26 years old, coming out of college.
So, I mean, there's a lot of exciting things happen, but I definitely think that would be remarkable if there was able to be something between WNBL and WNBA from that development pathway.
I completely agree. Maybe that can be your new pathway, that you take over that and develop that.
maybe the spirit and the Phoenix can start talking about
there
things.
There you go.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say, rather than doing it at the league level, maybe at a base level to start it off, individual clubs connect with other clubs, between Australia and the US to get the ball rolling, because I think there's a huge opportunity for that. Because one of the things,
even coaching development. Sorry, Paul, to cut you off.
Yeah, no. I was going to the coaching development, but also the other thing is there's so many really talented players that are coming out of college that, for whatever reason, can't get an opportunity in the WNBA.
Yeah,
sheer number of slots that's available, and they do. Some of them do come to Australia. I mean, Sophie Cunningham. There's a great example. Came down, went to Melbourne, has gone back, and look where she is now. There's so many opportunities in that space. How do you structure it so that it's not, at the moment, it's a bit wildcat.
Yeah.
There's got to be some way to be able to structure it to be able to what Kelsey was saying. I just think that there's some real opportunities there. And one of the things that I'm seeing, particularly as we've been doing some of these business podcasts, is there's so many other opportunities that are happening that are around the game, to be able to look at ways to develop the game, to engage in a different way with the game. There's this widening that's happening. And I think it's a really positive thing, because that's how you get other people involved in the sport. Yeah,
for sure. I think the cross-section and the intersection of all those things is just incredibly exciting and a little bit untapped, if I'm honest.
Now, you mentioned something about the CBA. And I don't want to talk too much about the CBA because I know it's a hot potato subject. But one of the things you mentioned was that you were modeling, you're going through and doing all these different financial models.
Yeah.
Now, I'm really curious, how do you go to someone like Matt Ishbia and go, hey, here's a whole range of models we've been looking at. What do you think?
Well, that is the beauty of the models. We don't show that until it's finalized and we've refined it. So one of the key things is you don't go to your owner until you're sure and you've got the evidence and the proof. So that's a little trick of the trade. You play out every scenario, the good, the bad, the ugly. And when you've got the final scenario and how things look, that's when you kind of go to Matt and let him see what it might look like and how it plays out. Like, he's heavily invested. He really cares about this team and what happens. So it's not like we just get to go run amok and do whatever we want to do. Like, everything goes through our CEO and our owner, but they also have trust in us to do our jobs. So if we can say why we're doing things and the reasoning behind it, then they're pretty good. But you can't just go, oh, we're doing this. Like, you've got to be able to show, like with anything, the why behind it for your owner, your CEO, for anything that you do.
This is like not a CBA question, although I would love the business case and understand, like, because I've been a part of CBA negotiations with the WNBL, and so maybe this is an offline conversation, but or that is just because the business side of sustainable sport, like, I really would love to learn more, and especially because you've worked in front office and understanding the balancing of that. But this is more of an expansion. So WNBL is going through an expansion. We're going to have Tassie, and then there's definitely talks about another team down the pipeline. You guys are going through expansion, 2 new teams. And then I think it's the following year's 3, I think. Is that correct?
Yeah, so year off in 2027, and then 28, 29, 2030, there's 3 new teams coming in, 1 per year. Yep.
Perfect. Okay. That makes sense. That seems far better than just we're going to throw 3 more at it.
Yeah.
With that, like, so my first year WNBA, it was a dispersal draft. So unfortunately, SAC folded. And so there was a dispersal draft. I've never been a part of an expansion draft. Rode the wave with Veronica when she was not sure what was going to happen with Connecticut. And then, being a part of the Valkyries and seeing how that team pieced together and getting to see her success. When you're understanding that there's these expansions that are going to happen, how do you, and I think WNBL teams might want to start thinking about that, like, how do you not deplete the core or the talent or the identity of a team? Because expansion's great, league growth is great. It shows that things are trending in the right direction for the league standpoint, but from a team, how do you not feel a bit watered down, I suppose, by the expansion? Yeah,
it's really hard. Like, obviously, when the Valkyries had their expansion, we were allowed to protect 6. We don't know the rules for this year's expansion. Yeah. There's talk that it might be less than that. So as a team, you're like thinking, well, like, I want to protect 6, whereas the expansion teams are thinking, well, no, like, we need more pick of the, like, there's 2 coming in, with Portland and Toronto. So I think it's a real balancing act. And I think that is my biggest fear with expansion. Like, you've talked about it, Kelsey, like, it's the opportunity to have more fan engagement, expand the league. The league is in this watershed moment that you've got to capitalize on, but you don't want the product to be diminished. Like, every game in the WNBA matters. We've just spoken about it. Like, you don't want to get to the stage where, like, games don't matter in the WNBA, and that the talent is watered down so that, there's a real gap between the elite and then the teams, down the bottom of the ladder. So I think it's a really tough thing for the league but without knowing the business side of it, I assume they've done the modeling and the buy-in for these expansion teams coming in is pretty extensive. So I'm assuming that price point was enough for the league to say, we have to expand. Like, now's the moment that we've got to capitalize. But I'm with you. I don't have an answer, but that is my biggest concern. But I will say this. You spoke about it before in the WNBL and WNBA alignment, and I've spoken about it a little. You've got to hit the margins right now. And I think so I think just hitting the internationals is the way to do it. Like, I think that's the way, like, so maybe that is a way, to really go into the international market, really create that link from the WNBA to the WNBL and those international leagues, because there isn't going to be enough players to really make every team excellent coming out of college. So that's where you've got to hit it, So
almost having that depth chart on the whiteboard where it's like, you want obviously this, but expanding that more globally instead of just locally. Obviously, local talent's great, but looking at it that way to bulletproof yourself in a way, if that's even possible.
Absolutely, for sure.
Okay, finally, I've got a question around the whole the whole structure of a team. A lot of
Sure.
people who will be listening to this will be getting a great idea of how it all operates. But one of the things I've always been curious about is when you look at a WNBA team and you look at, the whole structure, the finances, the management, everything that goes around it, how do you balance all those competing requirements in what is a very visible market, because you've got a lot of media with focus, and more importantly, be able to balance off the expectations internally and externally, with the fans and with the sponsors?
Yeah, I think that I will say this. So obviously in the WNBA and the NBA, it's a little bit different. Like, we have a whole business side, but we have close to 400 people working over on the Suns and Mercury business side in terms of sponsorship, partnership, ticket sales, memberships, all those sort of things, socials. So it is a little bit distinct. Like, I tend to think we're in a little bit of a bubble on the basketball offside, like the world that I'm in.
Right.
But I will acknowledge this. We can't do what we do without our business side. They are just elite in terms of preparing pitches for our free agents, even things like our graphic designers, all those things. Like, we talk about the incredible resources that we have at our disposal. So, but at the same time, I think it's a little bit about your expertise and staying in your lane a little bit. So there is collaboration, but I'm not going to go over to the business side and tell them how to market our team.
Yep.
Like, that's their job. That's their expertise. And I would think that now with last year, it's the trust in people's abilities to go and do their job and do it really well and with excellence and with care. And I think we're in a beautiful moment at the Mercury, or, part of our organization is we just have elite staff who do that in every facet. So I think it's the trust across both sides, the reasons and understanding the why. So there's collaboration, but also understanding that my job is to put the team together. People have their jobs, and there's an inherent trust that they're going to do it with excellence. So I think that's basically how you manage it. And it comes from starting with who you hire and the process and the time to make sure that you get the right people with the right expertise, but beyond that are really, really good humans that want to work for your organization.
That's simple.
It is. It's very simple to say, and it's so complex to execute.
It is. It is. It's time consuming to execute, but it's worth it. Yeah, it's worth it.
Absolutely.
Firstly, I'd like to thank you both for coming on the show and for talking about all this stuff. It's really been eye-opening about getting an insight into a WNBA team and some of the challenges that you face. Fleur, thanks so much for your time.
No worries.
I got to say, it's been great having you on the show again and as a co-host. It's been a lot of fun. And I can't wait to see how things start to play out once they eventually get the CBA sorted, so that we can start seeing how things are going to start moving over there, because it's always really interesting to watch.
Yeah, it's going to be complete chaos. That's all I can tell you. But we're ready. Let's go. It's been a boring off season. Let's get this thing going. So, thank you so much for having me, guys. It's always awesome just to chat hoops and life and everything in between. So I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you get our latest pod. And we really appreciate if we could get a like and a review so we can extend the reach to more listeners. And don't forget, follow us on Instagram, Twitter and LinkedIn.